So John, you called me. I don't even remember what it was, 6 months ago or so, and I was driving down the highway in California, and you called me, and you said, I just had a call from Matt Lauer, and I said, shut up, and you said, yeah, and he invited me to his house, and I went. Can you tell the story of how this happened? And what it was like, because I read your column yesterday, and I read it again this morning. It's an amazing tale.
Yeah, there's so many different aspects to this story. I think for your listeners, there's the backstory, which I'm definitely a huge part of. But then I'm sure we're going to get to the biggest part of the story, which is that Ronan Farrow is a fraud, and that the media is completely broken, especially on this issue of sex abuse allegations. But just as a little bit of backdrop, I had appeared on the Today Show 3 times when Matt Lauer was the host, and 3 very contentious interviews. He did me no favors. We were not buddies, but he respected my work, and he knew I was someone who would tell the truth regardless of what the ramifications were for me. That's kind of been my reputation. I'll actually defend people I don't even like if I think that they've been wrongly accused, and I think my track record on this is pretty outstanding. And so I had kept in touch with one of his producers, and he had contacted that person to get in touch with me. And I went across the country, spent about 5 or 6 hours with him. And you know me well enough to know, Glenn, that when I do this is not a softball situation. I'm not actually. When I go into a situation like this, I am trying to prove that the person I'm dealing with or interviewing is actually guilty. So that I don't have to deal with this. I don't want this. Okay, this is not something I'm seeking out. I want to make sure that the person that I'm dealing with is telling me the truth. And anyone who knows me knows I can smoke out a fraud in about 5 seconds. So when I spend 5 hours with somebody in their kitchen alone, I got a pretty good sense of it. I had already felt like I knew Matt pretty well because we've been in a foxhole against each other 3 times. And then after that, I wrote a column for Mediaite saying there's a completely different story here. Ronan Farrow has, in my view, blown this, but there's no way for Matt Lauer to tell his story in this modern media environment, especially post-Me Too, where all the rules have completely changed. The media is completely broken. There's not enough scrutiny. There's not enough time. Once the narrative is set, it's over with. Well, I wasn't sure what was going to happen at that point when I spoke to you. I didn't know, whether Matt would end up doing an interview with Oprah or whatever. Matt asked me. He said, "Look, I have all this information that this book Ronan Farrow wrote is completely false and provably false, and that Ronan Farrow didn't even bother to check with people he references in the book, including 2 ex-boyfriends of the person that Farrow uses to accuse me of rape." Now, think about how insane that is, Glenn, that 2 ex-boyfriends are willing to speak to Matt Lauer, a person who effectively they should have romantic jealousy towards, who can't do anything for them. They're still in the media business. And Matt Lauer is now a pariah. And you know how the media business works. I mean, nobody wants to do anything to threaten their gig. This is the easiest way to threaten your gig in the world, speaking out on behalf of Matt Lauer against Ronan Farrow. And these are key people in the book. These are key people that Farrow uses to corroborate this alleged story of what he now calls rape, that he didn't even check with, who tell totally different stories that not only don't corroborate the accuser's story, but say, no, that didn't happen. Let me tell you what really happened. And so Lauer says to me, after, hours and hours and hours of conversation, what do I do? Is there a mainstream reporter that I can provide this to that will be fair about this? And I did some research. I talked to some people I thought were possible. I've been through these wars before, and I came back to him. I said, Matt, there's no way. You can't do it. The media is so broken that what will happen is if you give the information that you have accumulated via your own investigation of this, there's not one mainstream reporter at a major outlet that will have the ability and the guts to actually see this through. They will absolutely turn it against you. They will diminish everything you have found because it doesn't do them any good. Because the truth doesn't matter. It's not about the truth. It's about the narrative. It's about making sure you protect your own gig, that you protect your position in the media club. That's what this is. It's a club. And no one wants to go outside the herd because they'll get run over. And the easiest way to get run over is going up against Ronan Farrow. And so I said, Matt, the only way you can do this is if you write this yourself and use your own celebrity, your own journalistic abilities, your own connections to the story to personalize it. And so this was an incredibly long process. I mean, just insane. I can't even. Maybe at some other point I'll tell you the full story about all this when we have more time. But the reality is it was months and months, and it was intended to come out way before this. But obviously the coronavirus situation hit, and there was no way you're going to do that in the middle of the pandemic. But then the New York Times came out earlier this week via Ben Smith with, I think you accurately described it, was a soft push against Ronan Farrow, saying, hey, look, is Ronan Farrow really as good as he appears to be? Is he too good to be true? And let's just say, Glenn, that wasn't a coincidence that came out when it did and how it did, and there was a plan involved in all this. And
so that's actually good news, though, John. That shows that they are softening the landscape to be able to possibly flip on Ronan Farrow. I mean, it was an amazing story from the New York Times where they were saying, he's a golden boy, he's great, but maybe he was thrown into the deep end, before he was ready to do journalism, and so he didn't know all of the rules. Oh my gosh. That's your criticism? He's destroying lives, and that's the way you handle it? Oh, wow.
Amen, wow. Glenn. And to me, the headline there's so many interesting aspects of this, but the headline of this entire affair is Ronan Farrow is a fraud. He's not just a bad journalism. He's a fraud. He is a concoction of the news media. They fell in love with him because of Me Too. Yeah. He got. Yeah. You could argue he got lucky.
They fell in love with him before. They fell in love with him before. I don't know why. The guy won all kinds of journalistic awards before the Me Too movement. He was the darling of the media. Nobody knew who he was. I don't know what happened, but there he was. And so they've been in love with him, and he's been their golden child for a while.